as you're joining. I know we've got a number of people joining us on Zoom and Facebook Live this morning. Welcome to class number 11, 2023 Virtual HOA Condo Academy, which our firm teaches in partnership with the cities of Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, and Tempe. This month, I am also celebrating 27 years of legal representation of associations in Arizona. So I'd like to do a special shout out for all of our clients and friends in the HOA industry who I've known for the past 27 years. It's been a lot of fun working with associations, and I look forward to 27 more, hopefully. Let's start out by just doing some quick introductions. For those of you who haven't joined us before on one of these neighborhood services HOA Academy classes, my name is Beth Mulcahy, and I'm the managing partner and senior attorney of the Mulcahy Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona. I've enjoyed representing HOAs and condominiums for the past 27 years, and my firm currently represents over 1,000 planned communities and condominium associations throughout the state of Arizona. I also currently serve on my HOA board, and I have for many years. Before we dive into the meat of the seminar today, I'd like to start off by getting a feel for who's in our audience today so I can best tailor my class to fit the audience. We're going to be launching 2 polls right now on Zoom, and if you're joining us on Facebook Live, please feel free to answer the question in the comment section on Facebook Live. So the poll question, there's 2 questions. The first one is, which city do you reside in, or which city do you own property in an association in? And the second question is, let us know what your current role is with your association. Are you a board member? Are you a community manager? Are you an interested homeowner who's not a board member? Or do you fall into a different other category? Okay, while we're waiting for the poll results to be distributed, and I'll get back to those in a minute, we're going to talk a little bit about what's on our agenda for today. In today's class, I'm going to be providing first a summary of the HOA and condo bills that were signed into law this legislative session in Arizona. Remember that Arizona has a seasonal legislature, and so the legislature closed. It was one of the longest sessions this year, actually, in 2023, but it ended in late summer, early fall, and all of the new legislation went into effect on October 30th. And there's 5 new laws that pertain to associations in Arizona and condos and planned communities in Arizona. And we're going to be doing a quick overview of that this morning, just as a reminder about the new laws. And also we'll be giving you a cheat sheet on a deep dive on the new laws. And then we're going to move over and look at what are the secrets, or what's the secret recipe to have a successful association. Like I said earlier, we work with over 1,000 associations in Arizona. I have been, seeing different types of associations and working with different associations for a quarter of a century plus. And I think I can pinpoint pretty directly what are the characteristics to have a successful association. So this will be a great part of the presentation to give you some tips on how you can get to being a successful association if your association is currently struggling right now. Next, we're going to talk about how to be an A+ board member and what are some of the do's and don'ts if you're currently serving on your board. And lastly, we're going to finish up with internal conflict on your board, what to do if your board members are not getting along or fighting, and it's prohibiting you from getting your work done for your community as a board member. So we have a pretty full class today, and really happy to have everybody here with us. At the end of the class, what we're going to do is have a question and answer, just like we always do. And we encourage you to submit your questions via the Q&A box on Zoom or in the comments section of Facebook Live. And we will answer every question today during this session so that you feel that if any questions come up, that you have had your questions answered as part of this class today. Reminder, please limit your question to 1 question per person, and please be specific and clear in your question because it's really difficult for me to follow up with you live as I'm teaching the class. So try to really think about the question that you want to ask and then make sure that it's very clear so that I can answer your specific question. Okay, let's go back and see the answers to our poll question. So we have, wow, this is great news. We've only had this, I think, maybe one other time this year. We have every city in the Valley that we are teaching these classes for represented here today. So we have 2% Avondale, 9% Chandler, 2% Glendale, 9% Goodyear, 15% Mesa. Great job, Mesa. 6% Peoria, 25% Phoenix, 20% Scottsdale, 3% Surprise, and 9% Tempe. So we have a really great representation of both the East and West Valley in Arizona and Phoenix metropolitan area today. So happy to have all of you joining us here today. Now let's switch gears and talk about what's your role with the association for those of you who are here today. It looks like we have over 100 people, 104 people joining us on Zoom, and probably 20 or so more joining us on Facebook Live. So of those of you who responded to the poll, 75% of you that are joining us here today are board members, 8% are community managers, and 15% are interested homeowners, with 2% as other category. So it looks like this class is going to be very heavy on participation by board members. So that's awesome. Welcome to all of you. We don't stay on if you're a manager or you're an interested homeowner, because we have a lot of great information to help you as well. Okay, we're going to switch gears and talk about what happened in the Arizona legislature this year. Really interesting legislative year this year, I would say. From my perspective, it was, we had a lot of bills pertaining to associations. It was kind of like the first recovery year, I would say, after COVID, where we saw a large number of bills pertaining to associations, and larger than we've seen since, 2021, 22. It was also the longest legislative history, or longest legislative session in history since I've been following the legislature for 27 years with HOAs. So longest seasonal legislature session that I've seen so far, which is kind of interesting. And we ended up with 5 bills this year that pertain to condominiums and planned communities. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time going over what these bills mean for our industry, who they specifically apply to, how they affect your association. And a reminder, all of these bills are the law now. They all went into effect on October 30th. So we are subject to all these laws that I'm going to be talking about today. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the first bill. And some of these bills apply only to condos, and some of them apply only to planned communities, which are like HOAs. And then some of them apply to both HOAs and condos. So I'll be clarifying at the beginning of each bill which bill applies to each category of association. So the first bill is a condominium bill. It applies only to condominiums. It was House Bill 2251, and it addresses insurance issues in a condominium. And so basically, this bill is going to have some special requirements about what type of insurance condominiums need to carry. And also, it's very specific that you need to rely on your association's documents in terms of what the requirements are for insurance. It also gives the owner the right to report a loss under the association's property insurance policy, which is kind of weird because the policy is in the name of the association. And typically in the past, the only entity that could make a claim on the association's insurance would be the association's board of directors. But now the law was amended this year so that owners can report a loss under the association's property insurance policy. We haven't seen any issues of this yet in the past few weeks since this new law has gone into effect. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference, frankly, because first, the process is that the owner is going to need to ask the board to make a claim under the association's policy. And when the board doesn't take action or doesn't make a claim, then the individual owner would have the right to go directly to the insurance company. Another reason why I don't think this is that big of a deal, honestly, is because remember that the association's insurance in a condominium is typically the primary insurance. And typically the owners have like it's usually a bare walls policy. And the owners have their own contents insurance and also kind of like renter's insurance. But then they also have, like the betterments insurance, for lack of better words, like if you have upgrades to your cabinets. So really anything from the paint and or the flooring, the subflooring, and is going to be the owner's responsibility under their insurance policy typically. Okay, so that first bill only applies to condominiums and it pertains to insurance. The next bill we're going to talk about only applies to planned communities. And this bill relates to regulation of roads in a planned community. And so we've seen this bill kind of evolve over the past, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And basically what this law says is any planned community, and you have to have very specific criteria for this bill to apply to you. So first, you have to be a planned community. Second, then you have to have your CC&Rs or your declaration was recorded before January 1st, 2015. And then the third criteria is that the ownership of the roads in your community has to be dedicated to a governmental entity or the city or the county. So there's a lot of things that have to happen for this bill to apply to you. So remember, you have to be a planned community. Your CC&Rs would have to be recorded before January 1st, 2015. And then any roadway in which the ownership has been dedicated or transferred to the city, town, or county, usually that's just set up right at the inception of the association. So if you meet those three criteria as a planned community, you need to have a meeting of the membership to determine whether or not to continue to regulate public roadways. And that meeting of the membership needs to take place within a certain time period in the next few years. And I would encourage you to take a look at our cheat sheet for more information on that if you are a planned community that falls under one of those categories that we talked about, or all of those categories that we talked about. Kind of the key thing here is it's been a big question mark whether or not if the roads are owned and regulated by the city, town, municipality, or county, and the association still enforce parking on the streets. That's basically what this bill is about, or speeding on the streets. And it's kind of a big question mark because the CC&Rs are a contract between the owners and the association. So really, if our CC&Rs say no parking on the street, we only have the contract with the owners and the owner's guests, through the relationship between the owner and the guest. And so it's been kind of a big question mark over the years. So what the legislature is doing with this bill is kind of putting it to a vote of the membership. Like, hey, if you still want to have the association regulating parking and any other things like parking RVs, parking boats, parking vehicles, overnight or during the day on these municipality, city, or county-owned streets. If you don't have this vote within the time period, you'll lose that right to enforce it. The practical reality of this bill, based upon 25 years plus of practicing law in this area, is that we can't even get a vote of the membership to return money to the owners. Think about that. So trying to get them to vote to, keep control of the public roadways so that we can control parking, it's probably not going to be something that happens. So a lot of what the practical reality of this bill is that even if many associations make the effort to have the vote, it likely is not going to pass because I don't think you're going to have the requisite number of homeowners that you need to approve it because people just won't participate. So just something to think about if you live in a community with public roadways and you're a planned community or HOA and your CC&Rs are recorded after January 1st, 2015, the association likely is going to be losing our ability to enforce parking on your streets because of the strict regulations that you need to follow to under this new law. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the third bill, House Bill 2301. This one applies to both condominiums and to planned communities. And it's one of these political activity bills. Really, since 2020, the COVID legislature, and maybe even a little bit before then, I would say, maybe the elections that we had seen after 2016, we've seen a lot of political bills that pertain to HOAs and condominiums. So this bill, of course, like I said, applies to both HOAs and condos. This is a very, very specific bill, though. This bill is going to, so if you have an association where you have it as a guard-gated community or a controlled gate community where you have to have a code to get in. So there's a fence around the association and you can't just walk in on the streets. If you are one of those associations, the association can, require that if you're entering the property to engage in some sort of political activity. It could be asking for signatures on a political initiative. It could be campaigning. It could be wanting to come and talk to your residents about some sort of a proposition. So if you live in a gated community or a community where there's 24-hour guard, no one can enter the community unless they are accompanied by a unit owner or resident of the association to engage in these political activities. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Obviously, if it's a gated community, you can't enter the property just at will. You'd have to have some permission to get in. But even if you are able to enter, you have to be with a resident of the association or an owner in the association to engage in these political activities in the community. Again, I don't really see this being something that becomes a big deal. I don't think we're going to get a lot of questions on this, but you just need to be aware of it. If you have people, we see this typically right around election times. And if you have somebody who illegally is entering your community to hand out flyers or to try to get signatures for a political initiative, unless they're with a resident or an owner, they are not allowed to be there. Next bill applies to planned communities and condominiums. It's House Bill 2607, and it deals with board member removal process. So just kind of a backup on this, there's a specific law in Arizona on how you can remove a board member or board members or the entire board from office. And state law in planned communities and condominiums, the Condominium Act and the Planned Communities Act, trumps whatever is in your bylaws regarding the board removal process. So it's really important that you're aware of that. What we've seen over the years is the board removal statute's been around for, 15 years. We continue to see some fine tuning and tweaking on it to address issues that may come up and may be raised to the legislature that the legislature feels a need to act on. And so basically, one of the changes in this year's legislative session is that the bill adds a deadline to the board to act upon receipt of a petition that calls for removal of a member. So basically, if all the requirements for removal of a member of the board are met, so there has to be a petition signed by the requisite number of owners submitted to the board. That's kind of what triggers the board removal process. If the board fails to call, notice, and hold the special meeting to remove the director or directors or the entire board within 30 days after receipt of that petition, the members of the board are deemed removed automatically from office effective at midnight of the 31st day. So there's like a deadline with teeth now. If you get a petition as a board to remove a director, multiple directors, or the entire board, you need to act promptly. Because under this law, if you don't call, notice, and hold a special meeting of your membership to vote on the removal of these person or persons, the entire board will be removed from office effective at midnight of the 31st day. You get the removal petition from an owner or owners. You need to immediately get on the phone with your attorney and start mapping out, your attorney and your management company, to start mapping out, okay, how are we going to conduct this meeting? When is it going to occur? We've got to get the notice out. We need to, validate the signatures, make sure that the people that sign the petition are owners. It's a very short timeline. So you want to make sure that you're meeting that, or the practical reality is the entire board is removed, even if you weren't listed as somebody that was, on the petition to be removed. Okay, the last bill we're going to talk about is Senate Bill 1049, and this deals with protected flags. Over the past 25 years, we've seen a lot of flag bills and associations. So this applies to, like I said, condominiums and planned communities. Over the years, we've seen the legislature tell us that the American flag, the POW/MIA flag, the Arizona state flag, the Gadsden flag, first responder flags, Indian Nations flags, all of these flags are protected flags and must be allowed at the armed services flag. So, all the different branches of like Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, all of these flags are protected, and an HOA or condominium cannot tell you you cannot fly these flags. This year, they added another flag to that list of no banning flag rules. And so this bill would make it so that an association cannot ban any historic version of the American flag, such as the Betsy Ross flag. So it extends it even further. Owners should be allowed to fly the American flag. But they also can fly the Betsy Ross flag if they choose to, and that would be like the historic version of the American flag. You can find our firm's updated summary of all these bills, these 5 bills, on our webpage at mulcahylawfirm.com if you want to do a deep dive on any of these bills. Or feel free to give us a call if you have any questions pertaining how these bills may apply to your association. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about our main topic for today's discussion. We're going to be talking about how to be a successful association and then how to be an A+ board member. I think over the years, I've seen a lot of different boards come and go. It's the nature of our industry. Every year there's elections in HOAs and condominiums in Arizona, and sometimes the existing board stays on, but most time we get a couple of new board members every year. And so I've seen a lot of different demographics of board members and changes and, age groups. We've seen, like older retired demographics. We've seen, younger families demographics on the board. I've seen different management companies, how they lead and how they work with associations. And I think what I would like to share with you is, okay, here are our secrets. Here's what we think are the secret formula for associations to be successful. The associations that do these things seem to have the fewest number of problems. And if you don't have a lot of problems diverting your attention away from your association, you seem to get a lot of things done. And your owners are happy when, the property's maintained, and there's not a bunch of fighting, and the Channel 3 news crew isn't at your pool doing interviews about, something crazy that happened in your association. So here's our suggestions on how to have a successful board. Okay, so first thing first is communication. The boards that are the most successful, they communicate all the time with everybody. It could be they're communicating with their owners, with their vendors, with the community. If your association's doing something, getting the word out about, something that's going on in your community. So I cannot undervalue the importance of outstanding communication for your association. So it's probably the most important aspect of running your association. So here's some suggestions on how you can have good communication in your association. So first things first, communicate with your owners all the time, whether you have a website or you're mailing, publishing, posting notice of things going on in your community. Probably the most important things is letting people know about when your board meetings are, so that if they're interested, they can attend and ask questions or become informed about, what's going on at the association. Also, having an avenue for owners to go back and listen to a board meeting after the board meetings occurred. After the pandemic, I would say probably 80 to 90% of our clients are doing all of their board meetings now on Zoom. And there's a recording function on Zoom. If you're recording your board meetings, having them accessible to the owners on your website for your association. So if somebody's interested in the topic, they can go back and listen to the meeting. Of course, the meeting minutes are the official record of the association. So what happened at the board meeting. So having those board meeting minutes handy on your association's website so people can go in and do a quick 2-minute read of what happened at the board meeting. Also a very effective communication tool. But just getting out the word, also another thing, having your financial statements and financial information about what's going on in terms of, how much money the association has, how much money you have in your reserve account, what's the percentage of delinquencies, how much are your expenses, are you on budget, are you over budget for 2023? Having all that information at the owner's fingertips for free on the website is just really valuable because it shows that you're being transparent. And some owners like the deep dive. They want to go in and look through all that. Most owners won't, but you're going to be satisfying the needs of somebody who wants that information. Some other important things to do would be, having a regular communication with the owners about what's going on in your community. Maybe you're engaging in a repainting process or a re-roofing, or Maybe there's going to be like a Friendsgiving at the association's clubhouse for Thanksgiving next week. Or, maybe you're seeking input on converting turf into desert landscaping and you want to get people's feedback. Just constantly having an avenue to get the word out about things going on in your association and giving owners an opportunity to respond back is really important part of having a successful association, because owners feel like they're informed and part of the process. It also shuts down board removal petitions. So, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, serving on the board, you're never going to be able to please everybody. But if you're communicating regularly to your owners, they're already informed of what's going on. And they know that if they have a question or a problem on something, they can, go to a board meeting or they can reach out to the manager and get a quick question, or reach out to a board member and get a quick question answered. So when that disgruntled person starts, going around the pool on Sunday afternoon with a clipboard saying how unhappy they are with how things are going at the association, if you've done all this communication, if you put the time in on the communication, guess what? People are going to say, yeah, no, I'm not going to sign that because I think things are running really well, or I don't want to get involved, or whatever. But if you're an association on the flip side where, maintenance is looking horrible and you're about to levy a special assessment, you're not telling people why they have to pay, $2,500 before Christmas, people are going to be upset. And that clipboard going around the pool is going to be getting a lot of signatures. So keep that in mind. Even though it takes effort to communicate with your owners and to constantly be updating them about what's going on in your association, it's saving you a lot of headaches in terms of problems in your community. Another point on that is if you are having a homeowner forum at the beginning of your board meeting, make sure that you are giving owners an opportunity to talk at your board meeting during that homeowner forum. So if anybody shows up and has a question or wants to give you feedback on something, that you're not shutting them out of the board meeting process. Typically, when the board goes into the board meeting, we're not seeking owner input after the board meeting starts unless the board is voting on something under the law. If the board is taking formal action on something during the discussion period, if an owner wants to contribute on that, they're allowed to contribute. But other than that, they're usually not, involved in the meeting. So giving homeowners an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting to talk during a homeowner forum is really helpful. Then they don't have to sit through the entire meeting if they don't want to, and they can quickly, in 30 seconds or 1 minute, give you feedback on whatever they came to the meeting to discuss. Another good suggestion. Conduct town hall meetings of your association, maybe once a year, once every 2 years, to get the pulse of your community, or if there's a problem, to talk about it and listen and hear feedback from your owners if they're upset about something. I've seen a lot of associations have town hall meetings recently over pickleball, over a board removal petition, which actually is a really great strategy if that happens to your community. Getting the board out in front of the community in a town hall setting to find out what people are upset about and to do better is a really good strategy. So having a town hall meeting where owners can come and, air their grievances or tell you how they feel about a certain topic. Another really great idea, which communication again, is planning some fun holiday activities or activities throughout the year where board members can interact and talk in a social environment with the owners, and also to get owners enjoying our amenities in our community. I know the association where I live, we do a really fun Easter egg hunt. We do a Christmas party. We do holiday decorating contests with prizes that are given for the best decorated homes. And so these are all, we do coffee and donuts, at least once a quarter, where the board pays for coffee and donuts on a Saturday morning, and people come down with their dogs and are enjoying getting to know their neighbors and enjoying the beautiful property. And having some social events also builds community and allows, good communication to flow between all different, parties here, the board, homeowners. homeowner to homeowner, maybe even have your manager comes to introduce the manager so they get to know that person and, would feel comfortable reaching out to them in the event of a problem. Okay, another thing that's really important on communication. I go to a lot of annual meetings, and usually when I'm in the back of the room counting the ballots, there's a homeowner forum where homeowners talk about things they're upset about. Probably the most common complaint that I hear about boards is that the owner contacts the management company and nobody calls them back. Or the board promises something and then doesn't do it. Or the manager says, I'll take care of getting that fixed, and then it doesn't happen for 3 months. And so making sure that the association is responding to member inquiries or members' questions or members' maintenance requests or maintenance requests regarding the common areas in a timely fashion is really important to have a successful community. So getting things done, right? When issues are presented, handling them and then letting the person know who complained about it, that's been handled. And seeing that as a positive because, if I'm out walking my dog and I see that 3 lights are out and it's making the area really dark, that's a safety hazard. And we're thankful that the owner is bringing that to our attention. We get it fixed right away. So responding to member inquiries or suggestions in a timely manner is really important to have a successful community. Another thing for good communication, make sure owners and residents know how to get a hold of key personnel at the association. So all of that should be listed on your association's website. So it'll be like the name and contact information for the property manager, the emergency number if there's an emergency that occurs pertaining to the association, or the police department's number, or ambulance and fire. All of that should be listed on your association's website. Another thing that it's hard to do, but it's a really great way to open up lines of communication is conduct a survey. The board puts out a survey. It's free. You can use SurveyMonkey or any other platform and ask members how they feel about things. Like, do you think the tennis court should be converted to pickleball? I'm sure that's going to raise a lot of controversy. So, or do you think that we should have a dog run in our community? Or do you like the turf? Should we convert it to desert landscaping? Or should we heat the pool in the winter months? Putting information out in a survey and asking for feedback is a really important way for you to understand how your constituents feel about an issue. And remember, even though you're a volunteer board member, you're elected to represent the majority will of the community. You're not, elected to the board to represent yourself. You're representing what's going to be in the best interests of the community. So conducting surveys to get feedback from the owners on important issues is a really good idea so that you're representing what the owners want in your community. Publishing newsletters, you can do that by email now at very low cost. Maybe even having a regular schedule of newsletters that goes out quarterly or maybe even monthly if you're the type of association that has enough information to put into a monthly newsletter. Just a great way to communicate with your residents and let them know what's going on, and also to let them know about anything that's going to be happening in your community in the future. Another great way to communicate would be to have a welcome to the neighborhood committee. When new members, new owners move into the association, going over to introduce yourself and giving them a small, information about the association, whether it's the documents, the rules, maybe something thoughtful like a loaf of bread or, just cookies or something like that. And there's probably already somebody doing that, but maybe formalizing it and then having a plan for each time somebody new moves in. And the way we know that somebody new is moving in is that there's a disclosure statement that is given to any buyers. And when the property closes escrow, we're notified that the new buyer is going to be listed as the owner. And we change our records from the old owner to the new buyer. And, that would be a great time for a list each month to be given to this Welcome to the Neighborhood Committee and ask them to welcome the new members to the neighborhood. Having a website and posting all the relevant information on that. We talked about that a minute ago. Really great idea. Also, associations. Now we're seeing a lot of social media. So we'll see associations posting on Nextdoor, having a Facebook account for the association, maybe even an Instagram page. Remember, if you are using social media for your association, just be really careful that we are keeping a very positive message and that, board members individually are not speaking on behalf of the board on social media. Remember that anything that's posted on there should be approved by at least a majority of the board. Also, another thing you can do is have a self-addressed and stamped postcard or comment card that you have in your membership office or maybe in your clubhouse where people can give you feedback via that as well. Some residents, may not have computers, may not be on social media, giving those residents that may not be as technologically savvy a way to respond and communicate with the board is a great idea. So really kind of one of the most important secrets of a successful association is the importance of communication. And I think I've given you a lot of really great tips on how you can communicate with your owners. And what you'll find is if you follow, even some of these, you don't have to follow all of them, you're going to see a decrease in the number of problems in your community, and it's going to make your job a lot easier as a volunteer board member. Okay, another really important quality for having a successful association is to have strong leadership. So your board is elected to run the affairs of your association, the business affairs, the political affairs, so to speak, to do long-range planning for your community, to handle maintenance issues for your community. And so leadership starts from the top. And so how can your board exhibit and show strong leadership in your community? So what would be some key qualities that we see for boards that are really strong on leadership? First thing I would say is honesty, integrity, and transparency. So if you're elected to your board, you are looked to by your membership, even though you're not getting paid, as, the leaders in your community. You're running the most important, basically the largest and potentially most important asset of these owners. And so, when somebody buys a home in a community, they expect that the common areas that the association maintains are going to be working, that the pool's not going to be shut down by the county, that the roads aren't going to have big potholes in them, that the landscaping is going to be beautiful, and that the lighting in the community works properly. And they expect that they're going to have transparency on the financials and be able to explain why we need to increase the assessment in 2024 by 6% and show them the actual numbers. Here's the budget. Here's what we spent in 2023. And here's what we estimate the cost to be in 2024 to run our association. And unfortunately, we have to do an increase to meet our expenses, and then show them the numbers. Being honest. Probably the biggest thing I can tell you is I often have to say I'm sorry to owners when there's a problem that escalates to our firm as the legal counsel for the association. So maybe there's a mistake that was made by the board or by the management company, or by the landscaping company, and an owner is really upset about it. Owning it. As a board, own it. If there's a problem, own it. If we made a mistake, apologize and be nice. I go to a lot of board meetings. I've been doing this, a quarter of a century. So the boards that are nice and professional and reasonable and who are accountable when there's problems, those are the boards that are the most successful, because people can deal with that. Everybody gets it. There's going to be problems in everything, right? In any business, there's going to be mistakes. But how you handle the mistake, how you communicate, the fix on the mistake, and how you hold yourself accountable and say, we're sorry, this will not happen again. This is not acceptable, and we will do better. That is going to make homeowners appreciate you, be loyal to you, and support you. And so those are some really important, characteristics. Whenever boards say to me, I don't want to give the records. This homeowner is making a records request, and I don't want to give them all these records. That is the wrong answer. What we should be saying as a board is, the law requires us to provide certain records to owners. Okay, there's certain things they can't have, like legal advice from the attorney. They can't have an opinion letter. They can't have any information pertaining to a pending lawsuit, right? But pretty much everything else is fair game. And so we shouldn't be trying to hide records from anybody. We're not hiding anything. If you want to review the records and you're entitled to under the law, we welcome the opportunity to provide you with anything that you're looking for. That's the attitude you should be having. Because if you're saying, no, I don't want to do that, I don't want to give them the records, it makes it look like you're hiding something and that you have, maybe you're doing something wrong. And that's not the case. What the case is usually that, hey, we're all volunteers and it takes 4 hours to put these records together, right? And it's a hassle. But recognize that it's, somebody's upset about something. That's why they're making a records request. And if we provide them the information and answer their questions, they're going to go away and this isn't going to be a lawsuit or a big problem. And oftentimes what I'll do when I get a big records request from an owner, like 20 years of records or something, and I know the client, it's going to cost a lot of money to look for those records, and I may be involved helping as legal counsel, I pick up the phone and I talk to the owner and say, tell me what's going on. What are you looking for in these records? And typically I can take, like a 5,000 page records request, and we can, through that phone call alone, we can usually resolve the issue. Or maybe I take it down to only having to give them like 5 or 6 pages of information that's really going to help answer the question that they have versus, spending hours and hours and, copying documents for them, etc. So being transparent and communicating on a records request can really go a long way. Another thing really important is having integrity as a board. As a board member, you have a fiduciary responsibility it's like a duty of care, a duty to avoid self-dealing, which means that you cannot profit in any way from your time serving on the board. So you can't be getting kickbacks. You shouldn't be having vendors doing special favors for you because you're a board member. Obviously, you shouldn't be financially benefiting in any way for your volunteer time on the board. Last but not least, be a team. Okay, so if your board is struggling and you're not successful and the board's fighting, we're going to be talking about this a little bit later in the presentation, you have to be a team when you're serving on the board. And I'm really happy to say I've served on my board for almost 14 years now, on and off. Some years have been better than others, for sure. But I can tell you that the years that weren't good in my community, and I see this in other communities, is when everybody is either fighting or everybody thinks they know what's best and can't bend a little to make things work. Usually nobody is wanting to roll up their sleeves and help. That's a problem. So how do we emphasize teamwork on a board? So I think we all can agree that there's usually 1 or 2 board members in every board that does the majority of the work. Okay, just know that straight up. That's how it works, okay? But the other board, and usually it's going to be the president and the treasurer, typically are the most active board members because they have very specific roles. The other board members need to be supporting team members, okay? I have served as the treasurer of my association. I've served as president of my association. There is nothing worse when you are the president of your association and you're looking at your team asking for help. Hey, can somebody, cover this meeting, or can somebody meet with the landscaper? When you're already doing 20 hours of volunteer pro bono service that week, and you ask maybe the other board members, hey, can you help out on this? And they say, yeah, sorry, no, I can't. It gets frustrating, right, for the leader at the top. So, for a board to be successful, you have to have good teamwork. And, there's going to be 1 or 2 people at the top who are honestly doing, a good portion of the work, a majority. But then the other supporting board members at large, or maybe the vice president and secretary who may not have as many responsibilities, when they're asking for help, be there, be supportive. See what you can do to help them, because that's what makes these teams gel, okay? And that's what makes you be able to accomplish a lot of big goals for your community. Because if you you have the one or two people at the top and they're stuck doing everything for 5 years, what's going to happen? They're going to burn out, right? And then they're going to quit. And then we have to start all over again and try to train somebody to, be the president of the association. And during that training period, you typically don't get anything done. And so, I'm not saying it's a life sentence being, a president of the board, but, maybe you should do it for 5 or 6 years and then you move on. And then in that 4th or 5th year, then you start training your new person, your protege, who's going to be stepping up to help in the community. So working together, thinking about what's best for the community. There'll be times as a board where you don't agree on things, but majority rules. So you have to accept that you're in the minority on the board and support the board for the majority decision. You can't go around, holding a sign up in front of the community saying, I wanted a playground, but the board wouldn't let me. Okay. That's not helping anybody. What you need to do is if you lose on a vote, for example, for a playground, that happened to me at an association that I lived in. What I did is I tried to find a way to reintroduce it next year with all of the concerns that the board had to vote it down. I found solutions. And then guess what? It passed the next year. So, working together as a team and supporting each other and, being able to delegate as the board president to others on the team and having those team members step up to help, really important to have a successful team. Okay, very briefly, we also have, commitment and determination. So I'm going to be the first person to tell you this, like serving on the board is not all chocolates and roses. Okay, there are many times during your time on the board where it's upsetting. Okay, I've got mostly board members here. 75% of the board are here, on this call today. And what I can tell you is that does happen. That happens in every association where you're upset about something that's happened. Maybe there's an event. Maybe the, drug enforcement agency was just at your association for 4 days straight doing a SWAT on, a rent out property. That's not something that we created, but we have to deal with the aftermath of the owners complaining about it. Why isn't the board doing anything? And it's frustrating. These type of issues come up all the time. So, when you serve on the board, this is going to cross your mind at least 5 times every year. I don't want to be on this board. I want to quit. And when's my term up? Okay. That's, you need to know that straight up. That is how you are feeling as a board sometimes. But to balance that out, if you have a scale here, you're going to be feeling that sometimes. But the majority of the time, you're going to be feeling, I'm so happy at how nice our community looks. And I'm so happy that I was part of installing the new flagpole and that our pool has been resurfaced and it's beautiful and that we have 2 new pickleball courts or whatever the things are that you're accomplishing for your association. That is going to far outweigh some of the negative feelings that you have sometimes about serving on a board. So you have to be committed to making your community better and you have to be determined to overcome the challenges that you'll have when you're serving on the board. And there will be challenges, trust me. Okay. Well, next thing we're going to kind of switch into is talk a little bit about, what are some qualities of an A+ board member? We talked a little bit about on a whole, how does the, board function? How can we effectively function as a board? And we've talked all about, communication, being a good team member, being honest, having integrity, being transparent, being committed, having determination, communicating with your owners. Now we're going to switch and talk a little bit about, how to, be a good board member. And so, a couple things that we want to share with you right now. We have a great cheat sheet on duties and responsibilities of a board member. That's cheat sheet. We also have a number of classes that we have taught that the videos are on our website. Where we give you, in the 3-minute read, these are the things you need to know about serving as a board member. And we go through everything from what the open meeting law is and how you need to comply with it to the fact that you need to pay taxes as an association, state and federal taxes. that there are federal laws that you need to be aware of, in addition to state laws. And so we're going to be sharing with you a number of different cheat sheets that we think will be really helpful to you so that you can be an A+ board member. So like I said, the first one, duties and responsibilities of the board. The top 10 things you need to know about Arizona law. Federal laws and what's important about federal laws. A board member's code of conduct and how, if you have any board members that maybe are falling below the acceptable standard, maybe having your board adopt a board member's code of conduct to best handle any difficulties that you may be having with a board member. And so all of these different cheat sheets, I think, would be really helpful to you as you are navigating how to be a good board member. Also, don't forget, reach out to your trusted advisors for advice as a board member. Obviously, you typically need the support of a majority of the board to do this, but having your attorney, know your attorney, and be able to reach out to your attorney and ask questions, and maybe even have a boot camp where the attorney comes into your association and talks about changes in the law or important laws that you need to be aware of, and maybe talks about dysfunction, if you have some dysfunction on your board, and how we can overcome dysfunction. These are all great cheat sheets that can help you and support you as a board member. Reach out to your lawyers, your trusted advisor, your insurance agent, your reserve specialist, your management company. All of these people are here to support you, and we're on your team to help you be successful as board members in your community. Okay, last topic we're going to talk about in our last 7 minutes before we get into our question and answer is board conflict. And so I'm going to put a little poll up on the screen. It looks like we have about 120 people here with us on Zoom, and we have about 20 joining us on Facebook Live. So our question for you today is, does your association have any infighting between board members? I hope you don't, but I'd be curious just to know. We have really good representation today. If you wouldn't mind answering yes or no, or I don't know. If you're a homeowner, you may not be aware of what's the inner workings of your board. But I'll be really curious to hear, what your responses are, because there have been times on my board that I've served that there has been some fighting where people think things should be done a certain way, and they don't like the direction that the board's taking. But I'd say 80% of the time things are pretty peaceful and everybody is respectful of different opinions, etc. Okay, so our poll results are in. Actually, I'm pleasantly surprised that only 35% of you say that there is infighting between board members. 47% say no, and 18% say I don't know. So I think there's a sprinkling of you here, 35%, that are saying, hey, yeah, our board has some infighting. So let's talk a little bit about how to handle that if you're having board conflict. And we have a great cheat sheet on this topic, dealing with difficult people. And we also have a cheat sheet on using the DISC personality to help your association get along and get things done, which we're going to be sharing with you. But I'm going to give you a quick 411 on the things you need to know. Okay, so how do we deal with conflicts during a board meeting? So let's say that you have, maybe it's a lack of respect between board members, or maybe you have just like a really difficult board member who's maybe a bully. Well, first, you need to just set the stage with meeting rules that, like name calling, interrupting, personal attacks, loud voices, yelling, screaming, people that are, engaging in like scary personal space tactics, standing up and yelling and getting in your personal space. None of that is acceptable in a board meeting. And so you should pass rules if you have that problem in your community for board member conduct at a board meeting. The next thing, how to handle board member conflict. Let's say that during the meeting, you're fighting. It's okay to have a little bit of normal disagreement between board members. Sometimes that brings out the best decision, as long as everybody's being respectful of differing viewpoints, and as long as people can accept if they get outvoted. Majority rules. So what do we do if there's conflict during the board meeting? Well, first, make sure you give all board members an opportunity to talk. Just because the board knows that going into the meeting, like, hey, I know I've got a majority of the board that want to proceed forward with the pickleball courts or whatever the issue is. You still want to give those in the minority an opportunity to express their viewpoint and to be able to talk about an issue. And you don't want to shut them down and make them feel like they're unheard. There's a fine line here because you don't want to go overboard and have, the whole meeting hijacked, but there needs to be a time period when the board's voting on something. So typically we see a motion to approve something and a second, and then it moves forward to a discussion time period. Giving every board member at least 1 minute to talk about a topic is fair and should be allowed, especially if there is, a dissent or disagreement between the board members. So giving everybody an opportunity to talk with equal time is a really good suggestion on how to limit board member conflict. Add a follow-up discussion on a topic after all board members have been given the opportunity to speak. So what I typically will see at a board meeting is there might be one or two people that are dominating the discussion. And so oftentimes, during this discussion period, when the board's thinking about approving or disapproving something, one board member will start, and then maybe another board member will say something. And then that first board member that started wants to respond again. And so that one board member is getting like 4-to-1 time on talking about an issue. So, and that can be a problem. So enact something that says that, okay, all board members are given an opportunity to talk once before you get a second time to talk on a topic. That's a good strategy if you have one board member who's dominating, the discussion. Educate new board members on board processes and outstanding issues, because sometimes part of the conflict is maybe somebody's elected to the board because they're upset about something. Honestly, that's how I got on my board the second time around. I was upset about something, and then somebody quit being on the board and no one else volunteered to be on the board. So guess what? I was appointed to be on the board. And so when I got on the board, I was upset about my issue, very upset about it, but I didn't really have all of the information on it. And so it was really helpful that the board president asked to have coffee with me and talk a little bit about the problem and give me some background information that I didn't know because I wasn't privy to the executive session meetings as a homeowner that wasn't on the board. And so having an open mind coming into the board and being willing to listen to, okay, these are the issues that we're facing, and here's some background information that you may not be aware of, might give you a little different perspective on things and is helpful. So providing education and having, some mentoring on issues and board processes can be very helpful to limit conflict on your board. Using a censure. So if you have bad behavior by one or two board members on your board, get advice from your legal counsel and think about enacting a censure system where, for example, this person is out of control at the board meetings and we've had to call the police. Maybe officially censure that board member and maybe bring in an off-duty police officer to help you navigate the next meeting, or bring your attorney to help you navigate the next meeting. If an officer is the one that's engaging in conflict or bad behavior, remember that an officer's title can be stripped typically by the board. So if you have a majority of the board that wants to remove the treasurer from his treasurer position, the majority of the board can make that decision at an open board meeting. That board member is still a board member at large, but the title has been taken away because of bad behavior. Consider adopting the code of conduct. We shared that with you earlier in this presentation today. That's a very effective tool if you have somebody who's behaving inappropriately as a board member, and it covers everything from bad meeting behavior to, talking poorly about the board on social media, to spreading false information, disclosing confidential information regarding the association to owners that shouldn't be disclosed under the law. These are all great suggestions that you can have your board adopt a code of conduct, and all board members will be bound by it if a majority of the board adopts the code of conduct. And if they violate it, then get your attorney involved. Get advice from your attorney. This is not my first rodeo. right? I've been on my board for 14 years. I've been working with associations for 25 plus years. I have seen basically every dysfunctional possible situation in a board. And I have successfully been able to help many associations change and go from dysfunction to highly functioning associations. So reach out to your trusted advisors. Consider having a boot camp with your attorney to talk through the issues. Look at this DISC cheat sheet. So the DISC is a personality test that is done, and it explains why people behave the way they do. And this is a really fascinating cheat sheet. I really encourage you to look at it. And so every team has, different personalities on it. And so what we want to do is try to figure out what personality types the board members are, and then give them jobs that are going to best match with their personality. And I do this typically with boot camps all the time. I ask everybody to take the personality test, and especially where there's a high level of dysfunction. And we talk about, okay, these are the personalities here at the table. Susie is a C personality type, which has a high need for detail. And so when Susie is asking the treasurer for more information about the finances, she's not doing it to harass the treasurer. She's doing it because that's how her brain works. She wants to see the bank statements. She wants to see, the most recent year-to-date budget. In fact, Susie probably should be the treasurer because she's such a high detail person. Then you have people who are just good supporting members, the S personality type, where they're just really good team members. They don't like conflict. So, having this person at this table with all this fighting causes that anxiety for the S personality type. Then we've got the I personality type, which is gets along really well with everybody, social. We don't want to make that person the treasurer. They're not going to be successful there. What we want to make that person in charge of is the Christmas party and getting the word out about the annual meeting, communications type things. And then we've got the D personality type, which is the dominant personality type. That person is a great person to get decisions made. They help the group. Typically, in my experience, successful associations typically have the D person as the president because they don't like to have long meetings. They like to make decisions. They try to, force the C person who likes all the facts and wants to look at everything 18 different ways before they make a decision. They, push that C person to make a decision, and that C person slows down the D person. And so once we go through all of these different personality types, people are usually laughing because they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. That is so true. That is why Susie is always, wanting more detail from the manager. And so we explore, okay, this is how the personality types are working, the dynamics here. And this is maybe why we're struggling as a board. Maybe we need to kind of realign the positions and talk through some of these issues. Maybe you've got a bully on the board. Maybe we need to talk that through. How do we handle that? How do we curb that bullying behavior so that it's not going to ruin the dynamics of the board? So really, all of these are some good suggestions for your board if you're facing board conflict. If you don't have it right now, if you're in the 47% or 18%, if you don't know, keep this in your back pocket as something you can bring out if you get into a difficult situation in the future on your board. Well, let's finish up here. A few things to mention. We had 119 live viewers on Zoom and many others on Facebook Live today. So thank you so much for making an effort to be here today. Don't forget, we have our December events coming up. In December, we do not, due to the holidays, have a third Tuesday in December neighborhood services HOA class with the topic like we did today. Instead, what we do is we have our first Friday. And we do that normally, as you know, the first Friday of every month at 9 a.m. We hop online and Zoom and Facebook Live, and we answer questions for free of charge. So in December, it's like a huge event because we take our normal neighborhood services HOA Academy classes and we combine it with First Fridays, and we answer a lot of questions. I think last year we had 50 plus questions. So it's going to be a great opportunity for everybody to get their questions answered for free. And that is going to be on Friday, December 1st at 9 a.m. And it's going to be our firm's virtual First Friday event and class number 12 of our virtual HOA Condo Academy. But the class is going to be limited to just answering questions that are submitted for the class. Also in this class, we're going to give you a little bonus information. We're going to provide tips for keeping communities festive and safe this holiday season. And we'll wrap up 2023 with our lengthy question and answer session, where we answer every question you may have that your association may have over the past year. As you know, we teach these classes pretty frequently. We're doing it once a month, and then we hold our First Fridays once a month as well. Please consider leaving our firm a Google review. It's really important that we receive feedback from you as to how we're doing, what type of classes you'd like to see, and we provide that information to the different neighborhood services departments so that they can show it to their supervisors and their city councils to let them know that the classes are needed and wanted. So I really encourage you, if you have time today, to please leave our firm a Google review so that we can then share the information with the neighborhood services departments, with the different cities around the valley, because we're starting to plan our classes for 2024. If you check out our website, we already have the first 6 months of classes listed on our upcoming classes seminars tab. And we always welcome feedback so we can improve. And we're going to be sharing a link, if we haven't already, in the chat on how to leave a Google review. Again, it's really helpful for us to hear from you. We are always happy to get the feedback so we can continue to improve. Okay, last but not least, happy Thanksgiving to all of you and your families. It's certainly my pleasure to work with the different neighborhood services departments around the valley to provide this free education. I love getting the questions and hearing from all of you, and thank you so much for caring about your communities and wanting to make them better, spending time to learn. And also thank you to my entire staff, especially Morgan, Calista, and Jen, for everything you do to help make these classes be successful. I appreciate you and very thankful for you. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I will see you again on December 1st. Take care.